So WoW's newest expansion just dropped this week, and whilst I've only had the chance to play a few hours of it, I'm actually really enjoying it. I think what Shadowlands does amazingly well is present something that's very much in a similar vein to something like Draenor or Argus, but does so in a way that feels quite new. For example, the zones and the entities we're kind of coming across don't feel a million miles away from something we've seen in the past, but they are kind of their own distinct things. These entities do kind of bear a resemblance to, races we've seen before. One looks particularly like an orc, one looks particularly like an elf, one looks similar to Draenei, and so on and so forth. And I think that's really interesting that they've managed to kind of almost reinvent these races as represented in their afterlife. And, even starting the expansion, you almost felt very much like you were dropping into something very familiar. The introductory quest through the Maw felt very much like Warlords of Draenor's beginning in terms of story pacing, but equally almost like Legion's Demon Hunter starting zone in terms of aesthetic. And I thought that was really interesting to see something very similar, very, very reminiscent of things we've done before, but in a new way, a new light, and equally being able to bring old characters to the fore again. The way they're using Thrall and Jaina and Anduin and Bane is very interesting. These kind of four kind of mainstays, if you will, of the Horde and the Alliance. But kind of bringing them up to date. They've not kind of had that kind of exposure in this way, I think. The Thrall-Jaina relationship being re-explored is very nice to see. The Anduin and Jaina relationship that we didn't perhaps get as much of in at least the base game of Battle for Azeroth. Bane kind of getting his kind of turn of an expansion as War Chief is very interesting as well, and seeing how he and Thrall interact, if at all, will be interesting as well. I think on top of that, even seeing Sylvanas become something other as well. She has always been out for herself in some regard or another, but during this, even the introductory part of this questline, you see a shift in Sylvanas, even kind of denoted by the fact that she's got a new outfit this expansion. And I know that sounds quite silly to say, oh, she's got a new outfit, she's suddenly evil, but it shows a change in pace for Sylvanas' character. It shows a change in sentiment on some level, and I think that's really interesting. I think the kind of juxtaposition as well between dark and light this expansion is very much in play. You get this kind of sense of morality across Shadowlands, even so early on as when you're first going into Oribos. You get to see the Arbiter, and whilst you're there, you get this kind of cutscene, and in that cutscene it kind of demonstrates how the Shadowlands are meant to work, and then kind of says obviously they aren't because of the Maw and the Jailer. What is interesting about that, though, is that the Jailer and the Arbiter seems kind of diametrically opposed. The Jailer is very much this kind of heartless, literally heartless, as he has a hole in his chest, toying with individuals, using, good people, bad people for his own needs, even kind of corrupting or seemingly corrupting Kyrians for his armies. And then on the other side, you have the Arbiter, who has been forced into a slumber and can't really fight back against this issue because she's been cut off from her subjects, in a sense, or the other worlds in which she used to send souls to. But yeah, so that's very interesting to see. I think the morality is a lot more kind of black and white this expansion, or it seems to kind of fall into that as of yet, and the kind of the fight between good and evil, even in terms of how the afterlife works. On that note, I really like the idea that there isn't just one afterlife in this expansion. I think it's very nice that they didn't simply go a kind of heaven and hell route. They kind of went this is kind of for mildly bad people, or this is kind of where you go if you're going to become a Kyrian, you become a Valkyrie-esque being. And I think that's really interesting. I think it's kind of nice to see that it's not simply just this kind of typical view of the afterlife, if you want to put it that way. I think that kind of lends itself more to a fantasy world than, simply saying, hey, heaven and hell, and what that entails in regard to what we know in real life. A lot of the models look brilliant for this expansion as well. I really love the Griffin kind of esque people in the beginning of Bastion. They were very interesting. The Kyrians themselves, that their kind of blue look was very nice, very interesting. And just the palette of these zones as well. The Bastion palette was beautiful. I love that kind of muted tone that just suggests like a sense of serenity just instantly. They're really trying to tell a story with the palette, the color palette, and the design choices of these zones. And it's similar kind of thing with the denizens of Ouroboros as well. The fact that they have kind of very distinct designs between the different like castes, the priest caste almost, the warrior or protector caste, and the kind of the trading class. And then obviously again, they're all separate to the arbiter. I think that was very interesting to see. And so what you've got is this kind of very well thought out kind of themed expansion, I think, personally, as so far as getting to Bastion. I also think what has been done really well is handling how we're getting there. I think it's nice to see that there was kind of a pacing as to how characters got there. For example, Bolvar eventually reaches the Shadowlands, but he can only do so once you've opened the way for him, and then even then, acolytes from the Ebon Blade have to open portals for Stormwind and Orgrimmar. And so you get this kind of tiered system of, hey, we need to actually, pull people in here, we need to get this sorted systematically, rather than, hey, let's all run through a portal similar to Draenor and just hope for the best. There's actually some sense of kind of, hey, let's get a beachhead first and we'll move on from there. So yeah, I think the story of this expansion is shaping up to be something quite unique, but equally very wowy. If that makes sense. It's very World of Warcraft. It's very much the same or similar to other expansions in terms of narrative points, but at the same time allows for a different exploration, a kind of different way of looking at the WoW universe and the WoW characters as well. I think we'll see a lot of different sides of different characters this expansion. For example, they're kind of, with their expanding on Tyrande and her kind of vendetta against Sylvanas, especially, with the pre-patch, seeing her kill Nathanos in quite a bloody, or quite a kind of tellingly bloody cutscene. Obviously, we don't quite see it. So I'm kind of interested to see where that goes, whether that leads Tyrande to madness, or kind of emptiness, or if she actually does end up killing Sylvanas. That'll be really interesting to see. So you've got a lot of these characters who are, as I said before, mainstays, getting kind of a fresh lease on life in this expansion, and I'm kind of grateful for that. I mean, I love Tyrande, I love Bane, I love Anduin. I do like Jaina and Thrall as well. I think they've had decent exposure in the past, but it's nice to see them kind of be brought in again, as I said before, as a pairing. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, so that's mainly the rundown of the kind of story and the kind of the feel of the expansion. As for gameplay, I can't say quite too much on that right now. What I've seen so far is very similar to other WoW expansions. The gimmicks of this expansion I haven't quite got to yet, but when I do, I probably will be making a video on those as well. What I would say is that the quests thus far are very entertaining, very interesting. They kind of make you want to know what's happening next. They've kind of allowed for a few more little side cutscenes, which I appreciate. They kind of help the story kind of move forward. I'm a big fan of cutscenes. I think anything where you can be a little bit more immersed in terms of the story that's going on, rather than simply some chat bubbles coming up in the overworld, is a good thing. I personally like to be able to, not see another character on my screen whilst the important NPCs are talking. So yeah, that was definitely something I noticed and liked. But yeah, I think this is shaping up to be a very interesting expansion. It looks beautiful. The story seems very kind of interesting and quaint, let's put it that way. And I'm interested to see where it goes. If you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you did, please share, like, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you really enjoyed this video, guys, please check out my socials in my description. You'll find my Twitter, my Twitch, my Discord, and my Patreon down there. As for Twitch, if you guys want to see me play games live, I stream on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 PM GMT every week. So it would be nice to see you guys there. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.